If consciousness is produced by the brain, then what do we make of cases like anencephaly, where most of the brain never develops at all? Does that prove consciousness depends entirely on brain structure? Or does it reveal a gap in what neuroscience can actually explain? I'm Dave Sharp, and I've been discussing this with Dr. Randall Duker, a man who has worked on my own mother's brain. And this is where the real question begins.
Information is no longer rare. It's constant. And in that constant flow, clarity becomes optional. My name is David Sharp, and this is Principles of Seven. We don't explain events. We trace structure. Because structure reveals something interpretation hides.
Welcome back to the Principles of Seven. Today's episode is not just a conversation. It's an exploration into one of the most profound questions a human being can ask. What is consciousness, and where does it come from? Modern neuroscience tells us that consciousness is produced by the brain. Neurons firing, electrical signals moving, chemical reactions taking place. But there's cracks in that model. Cases of anesthesia awareness, near-death experiences where individuals report structured perception despite minimal measurable brain activity. If consciousness is strictly produced by the brain, how does it persist when the brain appears inactive? This is not presented as proof, but as a pattern that may point to a deeper mechanism we don't fully understand. What if the brain is not the generator, but the receiver? Like a radio, tuning into a signal. Damage the radio, you distort the output, but the signal itself still exists. Neurodegenerative diseases show this clearly. Moments of clarity appear in patients who otherwise seem cognitively gone. Is consciousness gone? Or is access to it impaired? Think of Tesla. He said everything was vibration, energy, and frequency. Here, I think we're dealing with frequency. Sounds create geometric patterns in cymatics. Nature builds in repeating structures, hexagons, spirals, symmetry. Think of a bee and its hive, the hexagonal shape that it makes due to the frequency of the wing beats. Think of cymatic plates where we're putting steel and salt or sand and playing frequencies through the plate. They form geometric patterns, and they're very reminiscent of ancient mandalas. If reality is structured by frequency, why couldn't consciousness be? Let's go deeper into the human body. Your body's not just biological. It is electrical. Every cell carries voltage, around 0.07 volts per cell, and you have about 3.7 trillion cells in the human body. The nervous system communicates through electrical impulses. That the heart, it generates an electromagnetic field measurable outside of the body. Your organized energy. There is strong scientific grounding that the brain and body operate through electrochemical signaling influenced by environmental inputs such as light. Key parts of the brain, such as the pineal gland, which regulates circadian rhythm via melatonin and responds to light cycles. The claustrum and its proposed role in integrating unified consciousness experience. Spinal system and cerebral fluid, which is a conductive medium for neurosignaling, and its functionality is a light sensitive system, an integration system, and a conductive transmission system. This resembles a receiver and a processor, not a generator. Light is central. It regulates our sleep cycles, hormonal regulation, cellular energy production. Modern disruptions include artificial LED light, screens, TVs on your computer, cell phones. Excess blue light at night is a major disruption to the human system. This is where the work of Jack Kruse becomes relevant. He argues the body evolved under natural light cycles, and disruption affects circadian rhythm, hormones, mitochondrial function, and his conclusion is that light fundamentally shapes biological function. I'll give you a real-world example. Late night screen exposure has been proven to lead to poor sleep, brain fog, reduced focus. Natural daylight exposure leads to deeper sleep, clearer cognition. Same body, just a different input. Now, if we go back and we look at ancient knowledge versus modern understanding, ancient civilizations, they align structures with cosmic and celestial patterns, whether symbolic or functional. They live closer to natural environmental cycles than modern humans. The question is not whether they understood consciousness directly, but whether we have become disconnected from the systems that shape it. Are we seeing reality? You're not seeing reality directly. Your brain constructs it. It fills gaps, it predicts, and it interprets. What you experience is a model of reality, not reality itself. Independent discovery happens repeatedly across history. And we have to ask, are thoughts generated internally or accessed from a shared informational field? When it comes to the human experience, flow states, intuition, sudden insight, they do not always feel like construction. They feel like reception. The relationship between cognition and any external information source remains scientifically unresolved. Consciousness may not be purely individual. It may behave like a field. When we look at profiling and programming of the human psychology, ages 0 to 7 is the programming phase. We are in a hypnagogic state, a state very similar to hypnosis. And we just allow information to go directly into the brain when we're in that state. We don't question, we just absorb. Ages 8 to 20, this is where we start working towards forming our own identity, not the identity that others have programmed into us. Some people call that the rebellion stage, this teenage time that we talk about. And then by the time we hit 20 to 25, 25 is the age when the brain fully develops, we are fully integrated into identity formation, what we believe we are. Behavior shaped by subconscious patterns, reaction versus response cycles. Awareness enables change. Developmental psychology strongly supports early experience shaping cognition and behavior. I want to talk a little bit about something that is an amazing field, and it creates a evidence timeline, and that is acquired savant syndrome. This is something that me and Dr. Duker discussed fairly in depth, and we must examine this rare neurological and developmental anomaly where abilities or knowledge appear suddenly, often after trauma or unusual developmental conditions. And our first case is just that. A man jumps into a pool, creates damage inside of the brain. The brain repairs itself. And that case is Derek Amato, 2006. He suffered a concussion in a pool accident. Amato reportedly experienced sudden onset of musical ability despite no formal piano training. He describes the experience as if musical patterns were suddenly accessible rather than learned. His case is often discussed in acquired savant literature as an example of sudden skill emergence following brain injury. Another case in 1922 in the United Kingdom is that of Dorothy Eady, also known as Om Seti. After a childhood fall down some stairs and a near-death incident, Eady later claimed vivid memories of past life in ancient Egypt. She went on to work at the temple of Om Seti I with the Egyptian Department of Antiquities and accurately identified architectural features and locations within the temple that were later confirmed to exist. She knew this, she said, because of her memory of her past life, and she was able to uncover gardens and numerous things where she told them it was, they would dig and that's what they would find. Orlando Serrell, 1979, after being struck in the head by a baseball at age 10, Serrell developed what is described as highly detailed autobiographical recall. He reportedly can reconstruct exact dates, weather conditions, and daily events from the time of his injury onward with unusual precision. Another example would be Alonzo Clemens, 1960s, 1970s. I don't remember the exact date. After early childhood brain trauma, Clemens developed extraordinary sculpting abilities, able to form anatomically precise animal figures from memory despite limited formal education. His case is widely referenced in discussions of latent cognitive ability emerging following a neurological disruption, such as a brain injury. These cases remain scientifically studied with no unified mechanism explaining their outcomes, but they're also often grouped in a broader category of acquired savant or anomalous cognitive emergence phenomenon. Brain disruption, and then we have the emergence of a new ability, not learned in the traditional sense, expressed or accessed, it seems. Consciousness may function like a stream. The brain receives, filters, processes. Programming determines what is accessible. Change the filter, and you change the experience. Everything connects: frequency, biology, perception, consciousness. If this model that I'm presenting is even partially correct, The next question becomes whether altered brain states without energy can change perception or access in measurable ways. So the question is no longer, what is consciousness? But what are you tuned into? Dr. Duckert, I want to return to the point you raised regarding anencephaly, because it represents one of the most important stress tests for any theory of consciousness. From a clinical standpoint, I fully accept that cases of anencephaly strongly correlate with the absence of observable consciousness in traditional and reportable senses. That observation is not in dispute. But the question I'm trying to refine is whether what we are seeing is the absence of consciousness itself or the absence of the neural architecture required to stabilize, integrate, and express consciousness in a coherent way. Because those two interpretations lead to very different conclusions. If consciousness depends on integration systems, then anencephaly might not be telling us that consciousness is absent in an absolute sense, but that the brain structure required to bind experience into continuity, memory, and identity never fully formed. And that raises a deeper epistemic question. We don't fully, directly observe consciousness itself in any clinical setting. We infer it through behavioral and neurological correlates. So the limitation may not be in observation, but in what observation can actually access. I'm not suggesting this contradicts clinical neuroscience. I'm suggesting it may define the boundary of what clinical neuroscience can currently measure. So my closing question becomes this: are we observing the absence of consciousness, or the absence of the system required to make consciousness observable? And if that distinction is valid, then the real inquiry is no longer simply where consciousness resides, but what conditions are required for it to become expressible in biological form at all. I'm going to send this directly to Dr. Duckert. I wish he could have been here today. But from my understanding, he's out of the country doing some missionary work. He's a very wonderful man and highly intelligent man. As I said at the beginning of this, he's actually been inside my mother's brain with radiation, working on tumors. This man understands consciousness, and we've had some very deep conversations. And I'm very excited to send this to him, and hopefully he can come on the program here in the not so distant future, even if we do that from whatever location he is. And there will be a follow-up to this video. And Dr. Duckert, make sure you pay those dinner bills. God bless you. Everybody, thank you. I appreciate you. Please be good to one another. God bless, and good night. This has been Principles of Seven, and this has been Dave Sharp.